If you look for advice on toxic people online, you're likely running on outdated software. Everyone talks about the Dark Triad: Narcissism, Machiavellianism, and Psychopathy. But science has moved on. We are now in the era of the Dark Tetrad, because since 2020, research shows that sadism is also a dark trait. Why does this matter? Because standard advice, like the Grey Rock method, was designed for the triad. If you use it against the fourth trait, you might actually be provoking them instead of protecting yourself. Today, we are going to clean up the pop psychology confusion. We will define the four traits and we will learn how to defend against each one. And finally, we will solve the puzzle of the mix using the D factor. Let's go. Narcissism is often mistaken for excess self-love. Biologically, it is the inability to regulate self-esteem internally. The narcissist possesses a fractured ego and requires an external source to function. This research demonstrated in a series of experiments that narcissists show a measurable dopamine response to admiration, similar to addiction pathways. When supply is depleted, they experience dysregulation. This is why the Grey Rock method works. It starves the reward circuits. This is narcissistic supply. To them, you function as an appliance, like a toaster or a fridge. Your role is to provide a reaction, positive like admiration or negative like anger. As long as you react, you are feeding the addiction. Neo probably forced the Roman elite to attend his artistic performances. He was accused without solid evidence of setting fire to Rome before building the Domus Aurea. His reign shows a strong desire for admiration and artistic recognition, sometimes at the expense of political stability. When you confront a narcissist with facts, they instinctively trigger a tactical sequence called DARVO. Deny the reality.
I never said that.
Attack the accuser.
You are crazy, paranoid.
Reverse victim and offender.
I am the victim of your accusations.
This sequence acts as a cognitive flashbang. Narcissists deploy DARVO with measurable consistency when confronted with reality dissonance. And it was also empirically validated by Harsey et al. In the Journal of Interpersonal Violence. The experiments show that perpetrators using DARVO appear 9% less abusive and more credible, while victims seem less trustworthy. It is a measurable defense mechanism. It disorients you, forcing you to drop the original issue to defend your own sanity. Winning a reality war against a disillusion is impossible, since the biological imperative is supply, so your emotion, your only defense is starvation. So we call this the Grey Rock method. But scientifically, you must become non-nutritious. Monotone voice, one-word answers, zero eye contact. When the appliance stops working, they discard it to find a new one. Starvation is the only cure. Now, Machiavellianism is the strategic use of deception to acquire resources. Unlike the narcissist who is addicted to emotion, the Machiavellian operates on cold calculation. They view social interactions as a zero-sum game. Empathy is a weakness, cynicism is a tool. They possess high impulse control, allowing them to plan long-term betrayals without leaking intent. The study found that Machiavellians score paradoxically high on premeditation and low on impulsivity. They are strategic, not reactive. Their manipulation success relies on what researchers call deceptive competence. They appear trustworthy until the moment they betray you. This is why emotion-based defenses fail. Talleyrand served Louis XVI, the French Revolution, Napoleon, and the restored monarchy. He betrayed every single master he served, yet he died in his bed, wealthy and powerful. His survival relied on indispensability. He made himself the only person capable of navigating the chaos he often helped create. He operated solely on interest, discarding loyalty as an obsolete concept. The Grey Rock method fails here. A Machiavellian has no interest in your emotional reaction. They only care about your utility. Being boring does not stop them from exploiting you. To defend yourself, you must eliminate the shadows. Apply the right or it didn't happen rule. If they make a promise in a halfway, send a message 5 minutes later. Just to confirm our discussion regarding X, and copy a third party. You're creating a witness. By forcing them to operate in the public eye, remove their ability to manipulate reality. They engage only when they can win in the dark. They retreat when forced into the light. Research on reputation cost mechanisms show that even high manipulation personalities decrease unethical behavior when observed. Making the manipulation public exponentially raises the cost-benefit calculation in favor of the Machiavellian abandoning the target. Also, ensure that betraying you carries a calculated cost, financial or reputational, higher than the potential gain. If you become too expensive to manipulate, they will mathematically determine you are a poor investment and move on. Leverage is the best thing to do. Now, the most dangerous. Psychopathy is defined by a distinct biological signature, a high threshold for stimulation, and a muted fear response. They possess low inhibition and often high impulsivity. Neuroimaging studies reveal that psychopaths show reduced amygdala activation when exposed to emotional stimuli, the brain region responsible for fear processing. So it's not a behavioral choice, but it's a neurobiological deficit. They literally cannot feel social threat the way others do. While a normal person feels biological stress when breaking norms or hurting others, a psychopath feels nothing. To a psychopath, other humans are merely objects in the environment. You are either an asset to be used or an obstacle to be removed. They have no problem with violence. So they are considered by many experts to be the most dangerous of the Dark Tetrad. In the 90s, Albert Dunlap, also called Chainsaw Al Dunlap, became famous for taking over companies like Sunbeam and firing thousands of employees instantly, not out of necessity, but out of strategy. He enjoyed the firing process. He wrote a book praising himself while destroying the job of 11,000 people to temporarily boost stock prices. When asked about the human cost, he showed zero remorse. To him, empathy was an inefficiency. He moved through the wreckage of families and companies without his pulse ever rising. For your defense, appealing to their empathy fails. They lack the hardware for it. Showing fear is fatal. It triggers their predatory instinct. To survive, you must become a hard target. Predators in the wild select victims based on the hesitation, the submissiveness. Predatory psychology research confirmed that violent offenders explicitly target signs of vulnerability, like hesitation, isolation, lack of environmental awareness. Conversely, targets who display situational confidence and territorial boundary setting experience significantly lower victimization rates. So, establish your territory. When they push a boundary, push back immediately and publicly. Also, disrupt patterns. If they can predict your behavior, they can trap you. Be unpredictable and hold the gaze. If you are in a corporate place, somewhere where they won't attack you, so not in the street, when you speak, look them in the eye until they break contact. If attacking you looks costly or physically risky, they will move to either prey. They have things to lose. Strength is the key. And lastly, sadism acts as a biological anomaly. The sadist derives interesting pleasure, a literal dopamine hit, from inflicting physical and psychological suffering. While the Machiavellian hurts you for profit, the sadist hurts you for sport. They are the only profile willing to pay a personal cost, like time, effort, or risk, just to see you struggling. They invest energy solely to harvest your pain. Neuroscience research using fMRI scans showed that sadistic individuals show heightened ventromedial prefrontal cortex activation when witnessing suffering, literally deriving reward from pain. It's a default reward processing anomaly. Scientific consensus identifies trolling as the purest expression of everyday sadism. This study is very clear. They found that individuals who self-identified as trolls scored significantly higher on the sadistic personality scale and were willing to spend personal time harassing strangers with zero external reward, purely for the pleasure of disruption. They invade communities they do not care about. They systematically target the vulnerable. Their goal is not debate or ideology. Their goal is disruption. They feed on the chaos and the emotional problems they create. So Grey Rock is dangerous here. If you bore a sadist, they do not live. They get frustrated. They will escalate the abuse, louder, nastier, more personal, until they extract a reaction. Ignoring a sadist is like ignoring a fire. It only allows them to grow. To defend yourself, you must raise the price. So option A, probably the best. Evacuation if you can. Remove their access immediately. Block, delete, leave the room. Zero contact means zero dopamine. Option B, which would be the last resort, it's about consequence. If you cannot leave, you must make the cost of attacking you, legal, physical, reputational, significantly higher than the pleasure they derive from it. You cannot manage a sadist. You must make yourself too expensive to touch. Distance is the best safety. And now the tricky part. Stop trying to categorize people into subtypes like cerebral, somatic, or vulnerable. These labels often distract from the threat. In 2018, psychologists Machiavellian, Hibbett, and Zettler confirmed the existence of the G factor, general dark factor of personality. Just as G serves as the root of general intelligence, D acts as the fluid core of all dark traits. Look at this study. They looked at over 1,000 people and used several ways to measure dark traits. Turns out, there's just one main factor that can predict all those nasty behavior. The G factor explains why dark personalities are comorbid. They share a common biological psychological root. If someone scores high on narcissism, they statistically possess Machiavellian traits and psychopathic indifference. They are rarely just one thing. The G factor is defined precisely as the tendency to maximize one's own utility, disregarding, accepting, or malevolently provoking disloyalty for others, accompanied by beliefs that serve as justifications. Since the traits are so similar, figuring out the dominant driver is more important than putting an exact label on it. Do not ask, is he a malignant narcissist? Ask, what is he eating? Like, if a driver is validation, emotion, treat as narcissist, so the defense is starvation. If a driver is profit or control, treat as Machiavellian, so defense is sunlight. If a driver is dominance, treat as psychopath, so the defense is strength. If a driver is your distress, treat as sadist, so the defense is evacuation. Treat the hunger, not the label. And by the way, if you're curious about yourself, you can do this free test. It's short and you will find your dark traits. And now, the other problem. We are currently living through a narcissism panic. Social media has weaponized diagnostic language. You label your ex, your boss, or your parents as narcissists the moment a conflict arises. This trend is dangerous for two reasons. First, it dilutes the meaning. If everyone is a narcissist, no one is. Real pathological narcissism, NPD, is raw, destructive, and deeply rooted. Official data suggests it affects only about 0.5% to 2% of the general population. However, we have to remember that narcissist traits are much more common, showing up in about 40 to 50% of people, just to varying degrees. The whole idea of a narcissism epidemic often comes from confusing those widespread traits with the actual disorder. Basically, having some unpleasant or difficult personality quirks is just really common. And second, it enforces a victim mindset. Labeling someone a narcissist instinctively places you in the victim seat. It implies you are powerless against that disorder. Okay, that's a lot of darkness. Now we need to accept that humans possess dark traits, including us. We don't want to be naive. It's not a quality to be naive. You need to know when you are facing danger and how to react. And if you want, you can do the short Dark Tetrad test. It's free and you will know more about yourself. Hope it was useful. See you next time.